It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's video time. It's going to be another unsolved mystery, if you will. Although, I'm not Robert Stack. My Robert Stack impression's way better than that. I put myself on the spot, though. Anyway, today's discussion, the mysterious death of the Black Dahlia. Perhaps you've heard of it. One of those mysteries that have been around since 1947. I don't know why I looked there. I already knew that off the top of my head. But anyway, the mysterious death of the Black Dahlia. So who was the Black Dahlia? Well, she was Olaf. She was a would-be inspiring actress from Massachusetts who moved to Los Angeles and Hollywood in hopes of actress and of course fame, because who didn't want fame back in the day? Heck, who doesn't want fame now? But anyway, back to the topic at hand. Elizabeth Short. She was 22. She was in Los Angeles, just moved there. She made a few friends, knew a few people. Liked to, how shall I put this in 1940s jargon? She liked to party, I guess. As good as a simple, easy way to put it. She had a bit of a wild side. Some people would say she was risque. Thank you. Some people would say she was risque or risky, whatever you want to call it. And I guess during the 40s that was a thing. I didn't mention this over on Twitter, so I don't know why I'm mentioning it now. Anyway, she was wild, to put it lightly. She was looking, to make it big. And on January 9th, 1947, she went missing. It could have just ended there, but unfortunately it didn't. Kind of wish it had, but it didn't, because we wouldn't be talking about it now. 6 days later, on January 15th, 1947, the mutilated body of Elizabeth Short was found in a vacant lot in Los Angeles on, let's see if I get this right, South Northern Ave, apparently a well-known street. Her body was found in a vacant lot in this location, severed in pieces. And again, I didn't mention this over on Twitter, but I watched a documentary on the Black Dahlia, and I remember there was a movie called Hollywoodland, I believe, with Josh Hartnett, and it looked like in both scenarios, and also I think American Horror Story Season 1, all these places, all these shows depicted the Black Dahlia, but they found her body, the person would find her body like in someone's yard, or in like bushes or shrubbery. But according to what I just recently came across, her body was found in a vacant lot. So, yes, that's right, murder house, that's what it was. Thank you. And it's just weird that, like, TV shows depict, and movies depict Elizabeth Short's body being found in bushes and shrubbery in someone's yard, but in reality she was found in a vacant lot. So I find that very weird and interesting. Over 150 suspects were brought forward, were possibilities of being the killer of her. And I mentioned this over on Twitter, so I'm going to mention it here as well. Apparently in the 40s, it was just totally normal to suspect over 100 people. Like nowadays, when people are murdered, there's usually either one person or there's like a couple. Like you could count your list of suspects on one hand. Like when, I don't know, I'm just for the hell of it, like when OJ was supposedly murdered his wife in the 90s, he was the only suspect. When Aaron Hernandez killed 2 people, he was the only suspect. When JonBenet Ramsey was killed, the parents and another guy were, at the time, the only suspects. My point being that in our modern day society, there's usually only a few people. But apparently in the 1940s, it was like we have no idea. It could have been the milkman, the hot dog stand guy, heck, it could have been my neighbor on the 5th floor. And then 150 people later. That just seems crazy. 150 suspects. Talk about having no idea how to do your job. Or just maybe having no idea of where to go. Like, what do we go off on, guys? What do we go off on here? That was my 40s impression. Again, I don't know. Alright. So a list of suspects. Normally, you know the dealio. I list a couple suspects, or I give you theories on what happened. Not doing that this time. I'm going to give you one legitimate suspect that they have, have, as if it just happened, that they had, and that was the name of George Hill Hodel Jr. Apparently, he knew Elizabeth Short, and he was also one of the last people to see her alive. I mean, if you're going to suspect anybody, why not have it be the last person to see her alive? You pretty much just chalk it up and end it there. But apparently they didn't. Apparently he had an airtight alibi, so airtight that he was just one of 149 other people. Okay then. His name was actually the top name that I had seen. There was several other names, just random, like, hey, how you doing? Like Joe Smith, Joe Schmo. Here you go, like, just a bunch of, like, weird names. However, out of these names, there were 3 names that I came across of well-known people that were suspected of killing the Black Dahlia. The first one was Orson Welles. You know, the big, jolly actor and filmmaker. He was suspected as a suspect of killing Elizabeth Short. Seems a little far-fetched to me. He was really famous back in the 40s, you know, War of the Worlds, all that mumbo-jumbo. Apparently it said that he had violent tendencies, and there was also something to do with him and the Black Dahlia about mannequins. No idea, I didn't read enough into it, but he was a suspect. The other one was musician Woody Guthrie. I know next to nothing about Woody Guthrie, except the fact that he's a musician, he was a famous musician, and apparently he was a suspect of killing the Black Dahlia. I buy Woody Guthrie killing the Black Dahlia as much as I believe Orson Welles killing her. The third and final suspect that I found interesting is Bugsy Siegel, the mobster. And the reason I find this interesting is because, spoiler alert, my next video next week will be on the mysterious death of Bugsy Siegel. So I find this one very interesting because, well, for one thing, I just told you that Bugsy Siegel died of mysterious circumstances, so if he, in fact, was the murderer, then he met a very similar fate because I believe, let's see, Elizabeth Short died on January 15th in 1947. Bugsy Siegel died the same year, I believe, a couple months later. Now, I don't know if Elizabeth Short had any connection to the mafia, but then again, you can always usually, with these videos, whenever there's a list of suspects, you can always bring the mafia in. It's just what you can do. If you're like, we have no idea who killed her. I know, maybe it was the mafia. Like, who could have killed the guy next door? I know, it was the mafia. Basically, when you have nothing to go off on, you accuse the mafia. It's just what you do. As to the legitimacy of whether or not it was the mafia, was it Bugsy Siegel? I'm going to say no, because Bugsy Siegel at the time in 1947, pretty much on the brink of death, he didn't know that. He was in Las Vegas. He had just built his casino, the Flamingo, named after his loving girlfriend, who was also a suspect in killing him, but that's for next week. So he was in Vegas and she was in Los Angeles, so I don't know if their paths crossed, if they knew each other, I don't know. I don't know how much water or weight this holds, so I'm going to also say no to the 3 famous people suspected of killing her. Personally, I think that George Hill Hodel Jr. would be your most logical suspect, and a second or third person that was fairly close to her, or had been the last ones to see her alive. It's also worth noting, I chalked this up on the bottom of my little paper here, that years later on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries with Robert Stack, it was revealed that Elliot Ness, the great detective that brought down Al Capone, he was alive during 1947, obviously, because he brought down Al Capone. he actually claimed that he knew who the killer was that killed the Black Dahlia, but he never mentioned it. He said, like, he reported it to somebody, but then they never said, like, oh yeah, he told me who it was. Well, isn't that convenient? The one person who could have known. And here we are in 2020. I always like to mention the year we're in because why not? Years later, 75 years, 74 years later, and we still have no freaking idea who killed the Black Dahlia. Now, why was she called the Black Dahlia? It was just a name the media and detectives had given her because she looked beautiful or something like that. Not important. If anything, it's an easier way for us to remember her. Because, yeah. So, final conclusions here. Who do I think killed the Black Dahlia? George Hill Hodel Jr. And or another person close to her. Why did they kill her? This is a really good question. I would like to think that the person that I would just feel better knowing that the person knew her. Otherwise, there's just the thought of a random, crazy psychopath in real life, in the 40s, a time when the 40s was supposed to be a good time, see? And apparently it wasn't. And the thought of a random stranger, a psychopath, killing a woman at random, slicing her body and severing her into pieces and leaving her in a lot is just mind-blowing to me. Would it be better? Do I think it's better if she knew her killer? Well, no, but I mean, at the same time, at least there's motive there. I'm thinking that not only did she know her killer, George Hill Hodel Jr. or somebody else, but I'm also thinking that maybe they got into a little tiff, see, a little argument, or maybe it was like a love scorn, star-crossed lovers or something. Something went wrong. And this person was so distraught, so upset, so pissed off by the Black Dahlia that rather than just try to resolve their issues like two normal civilized human beings, he took it upon himself to murder her. And not only murder her, but just mutilate her beyond recognition. But either way you look at it, the poor woman was murdered. We still know about it today. It's one of one of the more popular unsolved mysteries in the world today. And it's just really unfortunate that we have a list of suspects, but we don't really know who did it. So, again, final thoughts. I think it was somebody she knew that killed her. I think they killed her because they got into an argument, and I think they had prior killing experience, worth noting. And yeah, so, what are your thoughts, people, on the Black Dahlia? Do you think it was somebody she knew? Why do you think they killed her? And yeah, so I will see everybody next week when I do my next video, The Mysterious Death of Bugsy Siegel, which will be probably maybe a little more interesting than this one, although maybe just as interesting. Not saying this one was bad. But yeah, so until then, au revoir.